All right, it is time for another 2025 college football team game by game prediction. Before we get to that today, though, yesterday's video is at 318 likes. Let's get this video above that. If this video gets over 318 likes by this afternoon, I'll do another video for you. I've got another one I want to do. You remember the what's wrong with videos that I did? I did a couple of them. I've got another one I want to do. You know, what the f is wrong with fill in the blank. What I got another one I want to do. 318 over 318 likes by this afternoon, and I'll do a second video today. We also have a call-in show coming up tonight at 9 o'clock. Make sure you tune into that. Give me a call. We'll talk some college football. But let's get on with today's prediction video. Yeah, good morning. That is Uncle Lou here. That's right. It is me, Uncle Lou, live on LouTube for you. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it also. And two, make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you're not already. I post these pointless, barely watchable college football videos almost every single day of the year. And believe it or not, some of them are even watchable. On the road to 75,000 subscribers. I hope to hit that by the end of the year. I think we're at 73 or somewhere around there, a little less, a little more, whatever. Anyway, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel. A lot of times you watch these videos on YouTube, you might think you're subscribed and you're actually not. Go ahead and check real quick. If you're not subscribed, hit subscribe. We have a great community of college football fans here. We have a really good time year round. Come join the party. All right, it's time to talk about Michigan's 2025 college football season. And of course, I am going to do the game-by-game prediction and give you a winner and a loser for every single week. Last year, I mean, it was a disappointment. It was a massive step back, however you want to describe it. Now, to be fair, they went 15-0 the year before, so there's nothing you can do to improve on that. Like, you know, in the age of the 14 playoff, 15-0 was the absolute best you could do, and that's what Michigan did the year before. So you could say, well, I guess they could do the same thing, and yeah, they could have. We saw Georgia win back-to-back natties a few years ago. Bama did it in the 2010s. I think Southern Cal might have done it in the 2000s. So it does happen, but kind of expected a step back last year. You know, the head coach was gone. You lost a lot of the staff, a lot of the talent from that year's team entered the draft or graduated. So it was kind of a lot of unknown, I think, heading into the year last year for Michigan. And it did end up being a pretty disappointing season overall, at least in terms of the record. Remember, they were 7-5 in the regular season, and that included some heartbreaking losses, but it also included a win over Ohio State at the end of the year and then a win against Alabama in a bowl game to finish 8-5. So it was kind of a mixed bag. The offense was obviously the issue last year for Michigan. It was just absolutely terrible. I mean, there's no other way. There's really not a nice way to describe Michigan's offense last year. Even Michigan fans have a hard time like trying to come up with like something positive to say about Michigan's offense last year. I guess you could say maybe the offensive line was okay. I mean, it was just bad. They played 3 different quarterbacks. None of them were any good. They went the entire season without completing a pass over 40 yards, which is just unheard of in modern football. Now, obviously, they hope all that is behind them. They've got a new quarterback situation this year. We're going to talk about that today. And one of the most important things, and this is very important in college football today, the schedule. Michigan's schedule this season, at least the way it looks heading into the season, is much easier than Michigan's schedule last season. And I'll just give you a brief example of what I mean here. You can see this year's schedule up on the screen now. There's probably only one playoff team on that schedule. You know, Ohio State probably ends up in the playoffs again, whether it's by winning the Big Ten or getting in like they did last year with an at-large deal. You know, Southern Cal, maybe an outside shot. I don't see that happening. Oklahoma, maybe an outside shot. I don't see that happening. So you look at the schedule, you go, you know, they might only play one playoff team. Last year, they played Texas. They played Oregon. They played Indiana. And they played Ohio State. Michigan played all 4 of the Big Ten teams last year that ended up making the playoffs. And of course, they lost to them all except Ohio State. They lost to Texas early in the year. One of their worst losses of the year, really. That was an embarrassing performance by Michigan. It blown out. And, then they lost to Oregon. They lost on the road at Indiana. That one was close to kind of had a chance there. But again, just not enough offense. They lost that Indiana game something like, it's like 21-15 or something like. They just couldn't do anything offensively, which was kind of the story for Michigan last year, right? But again, it's odd because, 7-5 after winning a natty, very disappointing. The offense was horrible. All that is true. But then you look back and you go, well, I mean, they beat Ohio State, they beat Alabama. So how bad really could they be, right? So it's kind of a little bit of both last year for Michigan. But they're looking to turn the page this year, especially offensively. And to help them do that, of course, they have brought in one of the highest rated recruits from last year's class, Bryce Underwood, the quarterback. And I think he's going to get the start. Now, they've got some other options that they brought in through the portal, too, some more experienced options. I don't really see the point in playing it safe at quarterback this season if you're Michigan. They had some of the worst quarterback play I've seen in the Power Five over the last 20 years last year. And again, it wasn't great. They ended up 7-5, but he had big wins, like we mentioned, against Ohio State and Alabama. If they can get even average quarterback play out of Bryce Underwood, they're going to win more games than that, aren't they? I mean, that's how I look at Michigan for 2025. The schedule is a lot easier. Okay, that's a giant check mark in Michigan's favor, right? And the quarterback play was so bad last year that it's nearly impossible for it to be that bad again in 2025, especially with a guy with as much upside, talent, and athleticism as a Bryce Underwood. Now, you're probably going to get some of the things that come along with playing a true freshman quarterback if you go with Bryce Underwood, which is what? Probably a couple of turnovers over the course of the season that really hurt you. Some questionable decision-making at times. Thinking he can do things at the college level that he was able to do in the high school level. Probably not. Outrun everybody on the field, that kind of thing. You hold on to the ball too long in the pocket. Nothing against Bryce Underwood, but these are typical sort of first-year freshman starter mistakes that you see quarterbacks play when they're sort of thrust into the starting role early on in their career. So I would expect some of those mistakes from Bryce Underwood if he gets to start. I would also expect some sort of highlight reel Sports Center top 10 type of amazing Superman-looking plays. For the most part, if I'm a Michigan fan, I want Bryce Underwood to complete a couple of third down passes for us per game. Move the sticks on third down a couple of times through the air. Can we get 5 passes over 40 yards over the course of the season instead of 0 last year, right? And you're in other words, the quarterback play has got to be better than it was last year. I just don't see a way. I don't see a way that it couldn't be. Right? They need to be more explosive offensively. Obviously, when you don't have any plays or any pass plays over 40 yards, that's obviously a massive problem. Now, one area of concern or question or unknown, maybe you want to put it when you look at Michigan for this season, is the running back room. Now, that's something that they've been able to rely on really for the last several years, going back to the Jim Harbaugh days. And I think they'll be okay at running back again in 2025, but this is the most amount of unknown, I think, that we've had about Michigan's running back situation in the last few years. They brought in a portal player from Alabama, Justice Haynes. Will he get the start? I don't know. We'll find out. He's at Alabama. They went with sort of a running back committee type approach thing last year. He wasn't happy with the number of carries he was getting. He enters the portal, winds up at Michigan behind a really good offensive line. I would expect Justice Haynes to have a pretty good season. They also replaced the offensive coordinator, and they brought in the guy from North Carolina, Chip Lindsey. Now, North Carolina wasn't a great team, but they did have an innovative offense there. So I would expect some new wrinkles out of Michigan offensively this year with Chip Lindsey now running the offense and calling the plays. They brought in a Fresno State transfer, Mikey Keene. He's expected to push Bryce Underwood for playing time, I guess, is what I'm hearing now. Again, I'm on record. I think they're going to go with Bryce Underwood. That's what I would do. I don't see an upside in playing it safe with a less talented guy. I just don't see the upside there. I would go ahead and play Underwood. We'll see what happens. They added all Big Ten wideout Donovan McCulley out of Indiana. Justice Haynes, I already mentioned. So they've sort of beefed up the wide receiver room, the running back room. A lot of attention paid to the offense this offseason through the portal, which, again, is not a surprise considering how bad Michigan was last season offensively. They need improved play up front. We'll see if they can get it. I think they're going to be a physical team. Again, that's sort of just the Michigan brand of football. It sort of all starts with their offensive line every single year, right? A dominant run game. And having a first-year quarterback, you got to protect him. You got to give him time to sort of read the defense, go through his progressions, and make the throw, right? So offensive line, like every year, key for Michigan. Defensively, Michigan was a top 20 team last year, and I'd be shocked if they're not a top 20 team again. They are loaded with talent on all three levels of the defense. Now, they lose some sort of all-time great players, Mason Graham, Will Johnson. They're both gone off to the NFL, but they return TJ Guy, Derek Moore is back. Those are some edge guys. Josiah Stewart, who left for the NFL, is going to be replaced probably by a transfer. They brought in a guy from Clemson. They brought in a guy from Alabama. The defensive line is going to be stacked. It's a little thinner on the defensive line than it has been in years past for Michigan, but that's kind of the case for every team now in college football. Certain schools just have like this sort of ability to recruit talent at certain positions, right? Like when I think of Michigan, I think running back, interior defensive line, defensive tackle, defensive end, that kind of thing. They just seem to be loaded 2 or 3 deep every year with those players. With Georgia, it's inside linebacker and safety. With Ohio State, it's wide receiver, whatever school you want to look at, and you say, man, they load up on that position every single year. Well, it used to be that you could keep like 2 or 3 future NFL players kind of on your bench, hiding them for next year or whatever. That's not necessarily the case in today's world with a transfer portal. So that has affected Michigan's defensive line a little bit, I think. Not, again, really good defensive line. The starters are elite, amongst the best in the country. A little bit less depth maybe than they're used to having there along the defensive front at Michigan. They bring back Jayshon Barham, Ernest Hausman, both back at linebacker. The secondary is going to have some new pieces, but that was a strong suit for Michigan last year, and I think it will be. Again. They get former All Big Ten safety Rod Moore back from an ACL injury, and assuming he's healthy and ready to go, he could be All Big Ten again. Michigan's defense last year was not the problem. I don't expect that to be a problem for Michigan this year either, and it got better as the season went along. They gave up a lot of points in an embarrassing home loss to Texas early in the year, but as the season went along, this defense got really, really good. In the last 14 quarters that Michigan played last year, they only gave up a total of 2 touchdowns. Total. And that includes games against Ohio State and Alabama, okay? They weren't playing the Sisters of the Poor or some directional school. I mean, they were playing top-level talent, Ohio State and Alabama. The Ohio State and Alabama games are encompassed in that 14 quarters. The last 14 quarters that Michigan played last year only gave up 2 touchdowns on defense. Just an amazing stat, really, if you think about it. What are the odds for Michigan in 2025? But we're about to get to the prediction part of the video here. So what sort of odds does Michigan have in 2025, according to the people out in Vegas, people who are willing to kind of put money on these types of things? Well, when you look at the win total, how many games is Michigan expected to win in 2025? The number is 9.5. Now, you obviously can't win 9.5 games. This is a betting number. So people see that number and they either bet over or under. If you're really high on Michigan, you think they're going 10-2, 11-1, you would bet over that 9.5. If you think they're going to maybe be more similar to what they were last year, 8-4, 7-5, something like that, you bet under the 9.5 number. But the expected win total for Michigan, 9.5, which would be a couple of games better than how they finished last year. What about winning the Big Ten? Tough conference, especially at the top of the league. You got some really, really good teams there. Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon. Michigan falls right behind them. Ohio State is the favorite to win the Big Ten. Not a surprise there, coming off a national championship. Penn State, who I think might be the best team in the Big Ten right now, heading into the season at least. We'll see. Eventually, they're going to have to beat some top 10 teams, and James Franklin's had a hard time doing that. But they've got the second best odds right now to win the Big Ten. Oregon is third, and Michigan fourth in terms of the odds to win the Big Ten, just ahead of Southern Cal and Iowa at fifth and sixth. Can they win it all? The national title odds for Michigan are a little bit higher than you might think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Michigan is 10th in the odds to win the national championship in 2025. They're behind a lot of teams you probably can guess. Starting at the top, Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, LSU, and then Michigan, 10th best odds to win the national title, just ahead of Texas A&M. So that's sort of where the public betting market in Vegas sort of fits Michigan in to the 2025 season. Vegas numbers don't mean anything. It's not an indication that that's what they're going to do this season, obviously. Just gives you an idea of what people think about Michigan now about 3 weeks, 4 weeks out from the start of the season. All right, let's go through this schedule. We're going to try to figure it out here, which is not easy to do in the Big Ten. You got 4 or 5 teams in the Big Ten this season that I think are capable of making the playoffs. Last year, if that was any indication, 10-2 is kind of the cutoff point. There were several 9-3 teams in the Big Ten and the SEC that kind of got left on the outside looking in. Illinois was one from the Big Ten, Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss, of course, from the SEC, all sitting there at 9-3. And then you had Miami at 10-2 that didn't get in. So it's the 10-2, 9-3 kind of range that you're shooting for to sort of give yourself a spot to make that 12-team playoff. Can Michigan get to the 10-win mark on this schedule? Remember, Vegas has them at 9.5, so it's very close to that 10-win mark there. Tough at the top of the Big Ten: Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Michigan, Illinois. How good will Indiana be? What about Southern Cal? Is Nebraska going to upset somebody? What about Washington? Let's go through it. I do think Michigan's schedule, like I mentioned, much easier, much more manageable than last year's schedule. Remember, they played 4 playoff teams during the regular season last year. Michigan did. Looks to me like only one playoff team on this on this schedule this season. They start off with New Mexico Lobos at home. I know fans hate these games to start the season, but if there was going to be a year where Michigan played this type of a sort of do-nothing game in week 1, this might be a good year to do it with so much new on the offensive side of the ball. Remember, they got a new quarterback, most likely a freshman, Bryce Underwood. New running back through the portal in Justice Haynes. They brought in portal players at wide receiver. And on top of that, they've got a brand new offensive coordinator. So ton of new players and an entirely new offensive system. So probably a good year to be playing New Mexico week 1. I think Michigan will get a big win there, and we'll get our first look at Bryce Underwood, whether he starts or not. This will be a blowout. So even if Michigan goes with the more experienced guy at quarterback over Bryce Underwood, I would expect to see a lot of Bryce Underwood in the second half of this game. And maybe that's what they do and sort of give Bryce Underwood a chance to play well. And if he does play well, then maybe they decide to make him the starter. I think it's going to be Bryce Underwood anyway, but we'll all find out at the same time here, week 1. And then you got a difficult game here on the road against Oklahoma. Now, you're going to tell me Oklahoma was bad last year and they're this last year and they're that I agree, okay? So was Michigan. Michigan bad last year, too. You go, yeah, we're bad, but beat Alabama. Yeah, so did Oklahoma. Like, teams can get better from one year to the next, right? And if you're a Michigan fan, you got to understand that because you're hoping it happens to you. Oklahoma is going to be a lot better this year than they were last year. Is that going to be reflected in their overall record? Well, that's a different conversation. Depends who you play, where you play them, when you play them on the schedule, all those kinds of things. But they're going to be a better team. Again, they had massive quarterback issues last year too. Just like Michigan, they played multiple quarterbacks. None of them panned out. They've also brought in a new offensive coordinator. They've brought in the quarterback that goes with him, John Mateer, and his offensive coordinator now at Oklahoma. They've got all their wideouts back and healthy from last year. They went out and got Jaden Ott, a running back out of the portal, who I think was the best running back in the portal. I think he's going to have a really good year at Oklahoma. And much, again, like Michigan, defense was not their problem last year, and they should have a good defense again this year. Oklahoma and Michigan were very similar teams last year, both in terms of record and in terms of just the type of team they were. Really bad offensively, multiple quarterback issues, and defenses that were good enough to keep them in most games. This game's at Oklahoma, and like I said, I think Bryce Underwood is going to be Michigan's starting quarterback. I can't take a first-year starting quarterback in week 2 with a bunch of new pieces offensively I can't take them to win on the road in Norman against a Brent Venables defense. I just can't. I've got to give this one to Oklahoma here. If it was in Michigan, I'd have to think a lot harder about it. But I think Michigan starts the season 1-1 after a loss on the road at Oklahoma. Come back home, play Central Michigan. In the United States of America, this game is being played, which is of note. I just leave it at that. And that'll be another win. They're 2-1. Now you get some tricky games here coming up. At Nebraska, home against Wisconsin. At Southern Cal, home against Washington. We'll stop there for now. I think you're more talented than Nebraska, Wisconsin. Southern Cal is close. And you're more talented than Washington. With the exception maybe of Wisconsin, though, I think those other three teams could beat you. You could lose on the road at Nebraska. You could lose on the road at Southern Cal. I think Washington is going to be improved and is going to knock somebody off who maybe hopes to get to the playoffs. And like at the end of the year, it's going to be a loss to Washington that kind of ended up keeping them out. I think they're more of a spoiler type team. Wisconsin's got problems. They got a lot of problems. Have you seen their schedule? Holy shit. I've never seen anything like it. In fact, well, yeah, I'm going to put it on the screen. Every time I can't talk about Wisconsin without showing their October schedule. It's one of the most. Where are we at here? Wisconsin. Here we go. It's bordering on the unfair here. Look at Wisconsin's October schedule sandwiched between these two bye weeks. Whatever team you're a fan of, and however good you think they might be, I don't know if there's a team in the country that could do better than 2-2 here. At Michigan, home against Iowa, home against Ohio State, and at Oregon 4 weeks in a row. That borders on the absurd. That just borders on the absurd, and Wisconsin's not good enough to handle that. Luke Fickell may be on his way out, but this is not a Wisconsin video. This is a Michigan video. Let's try to keep that in mind. Let's try to keep that in mind if we can. Now I got to get back to the Now I got to get back to the Michigan schedule. With that being said, I think Michigan beats, goes on the road to Nebraska and wins. Now, I've done a Nebraska version of this video. I've done about 20 of these, by the way. So if you want to click back, there's a playlist. You can go and watch what my thoughts on a lot of these other teams. But I actually think Michigan goes on the road and gets a win at Nebraska. I think this is going to be a great game. Dylan Raiola versus most likely Bryce Underwood. Dylan Raiola's in his second year now. This is a tough one here. And this is one that could go against Michigan. And I'm kind of giving Michigan some benefit of the doubt here. I think they learn a lot in that week 2 loss on the road at Oklahoma. And I think they make the necessary changes to win the week 4 game on the road at Nebraska, still just with 1 loss. Then you have a bye week. You come off of that, you have the Wisconsin game at home. I think Michigan will roll in that one. I just think Wisconsin is circling the drain right now. At Southern Cal, I view this game almost the exact same way I view the Nebraska game. This is one that could go against Michigan. This is not going to be an easy game. Southern Cal, ups and downs last year. How good will they be this season? Their defense hasn't been great. That's an understatement for a Lincoln Riley team. Will Bryce Underwood be able to take advantage of that? I don't know, but I don't trust Southern Cal. So I'm giving Michigan the win here. Well, I say I don't trust Southern Cal. I don't trust Lincoln Riley. I'm giving Michigan a win on the road at Southern Cal. At Nebraska and at Southern Cal, I'm giving Michigan wins in both of those games. I know they're likely to lose one of those. But for whatever reason, I'm picking Michigan to win them. But this is one of those things where I'm like, I can almost flip a coin here, give you a win at Nebraska, a loss to Southern Cal, a loss to Nebraska, a win at Southern Cal. Or I could just say you win them both, so that's what I'm going to do. Then you come back home and play Washington. I actually think you're more likely to lose this game at home against Washington than the Southern Cal or the Nebraska game. I just feel like this comes in a tricky spot here. 3 tough games in a row: Wisconsin, Southern Cal, now Washington. It's the week before your in-state rival at Michigan State. So maybe, it's a little bit of a trap game, sort of, could get caught looking ahead, that type of thing. I thought about go ahead and predict a loss here for Michigan, because I do think Washington is going to beat somebody that they're not supposed to beat. but I couldn't pull the trigger on it. And I've got Michigan winning this game at home. If it was at Washington, I would probably lean Washington just because of where this game falls on the schedule. But again, I'm going to give Michigan the benefit of the doubt and give them the win. I feel like there's so much new on Michigan that they're going to be better at this point in the season than they were when they went on the road and played Oklahoma. It's not just the new quarterback. It's new running backs, new wide receivers, new offensive coordinator, which means a whole new offensive game plan, more throwing the ball than Michigan's used to seeing lately. So I feel like they're going to be a team that sort of starts to figure it out as the season goes along. I'm giving them the win at home against Washington. A win on the road at Michigan State. Will there be any fights or anything like that? Maybe. This has become a very sort of intense in-state rival over the last few years. They had a locker room fight after a football game a couple of years ago. They had an issue in a basketball game this past season where somebody was standing on the other team's logo, or you know how people get mad about that. Anyway, a lot of back and forth between Michigan and Michigan State lately. It is a road game, but I'm not a buyer on Michigan State, at least not this year. I do like Jonathan Smith, the coach they brought in from Oregon State. This is his second year there. And I would expect some improvement here for him at Michigan State, but not enough improvement to win this game. I think Michigan wins. Purdue, one of the worst teams on the planet. Easy win for Michigan there. Then you get your last bye week before the last 3 games of the season. 2 on the road, and then the big one at home against Ohio State. Northwestern and Maryland are in the bottom half of college football. There's 140 almost now FBS teams. They're in the bottom half. In other words, they're somewhere between 70 and 140. Well, when you go to ranking teams, they're not any good. It can be tricky to play back-to-back road games, especially in the Big Ten. You don't know what these teams are going to be beat up, whether it's Michigan included. Weird things happen. I remember last year around this time on the schedule is when Penn State was playing, or was it Oregon? One, I can't remember which one now, was playing on the road at Minnesota, and no one was watching the game. And then all of a sudden you see the ticker on the bottom of your TV screen, and it's like, what? Minnesota's winning in the fourth quarter? And I ended up not winning or whatever. But weird things happen in November. Back-to-back road games can be tricky, but Northwestern and Maryland are just so bad. I think Michigan wins both of those games. And you probably already know this. I've done an Ohio State version of this video. I think this is the year for Ohio State. Now, I obviously hate myself. I keep picking Ohio State in this game, and Michigan keeps winning. So if you're a Michigan fan, you should actually be happy that I'm picking you to lose, because I've been picking you to lose every year, and you keep winning every year. Last year, you were a 20-something point underdog, and you beat them like they owed you money. And they went on to win the Natty like they were a good team, and that was in Columbus. That was a home game for Ohio State. Jesus Christ. It's like Georgia and Bama, Georgia might be better than Bama. Don't matter. They lose to them every time. And Ohio State loses to you every time. But like the idiot that I am, I've picked Ohio State again. What am I doing? That's the bad news. You probably hate, but the good news is that still puts you at 10-2. I think Michigan can make a trip to the playoffs this year. I've got them at 10-2. An early loss on the road at Oklahoma. But I think they learn a lot from that game with it being really young offensively. I think they grow up a lot that game in a loss. Go on a run. Big wins at Nebraska and Southern Cal. A win over in-state rival Michigan State. And a loss to in-state rival Ohio State at the end of the year. But hey, remember, Ohio State was 10-2 last year with a loss to you. They made the playoffs and won it all. Maybe this year you go 10-2, lose to Ohio State, but you get in the playoffs and win it all. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, I've got Michigan at 10-2 in Sharon Moore's first year. I think Bryce Underwood's going to have a big season. I am a buyer of Bryce Underwood. Appreciate you watching. Be sure and let me know down below where you think I'm wrong, and have a good morning.